One that stands out for me, and one that some folks have talked about already, is the misalignment of incentives for science and actually getting things done. And this applies more broadly to the culture of science, as Claudia just mentioned in her remarks. It also applies, I think, even more acutely in the context of climate science because of the systemic nature of climate change and the ways in which it affects multiple systems. I was talking last night with Maria prior to our dinner, and we talked briefly about this, too briefly. And one of the things that she said was that science in the past has focused and worked best to solve problems when there has been a mandate. And we know the history. Everybody knows the history of the Man on the Moon Challenge, the Manhattan Project. Is climate change the order of magnitude kind of problem in the public mind that could command such a mandate? And if so, how would we term it? You've now have a goal that you've stated for this workshop that might be the beginnings of a phrasing for a mandate that could focus our scientific endeavors in ways that might affect that kind of outcome. But I think some thinking and work has to be done to try and imagine what that kind of mandate might look like and how we might use it to direct science in ways that gets past some of these cultural inhibitions that stand as barriers to the interface, the science-society interface. I was also listening this morning very carefully as everybody was talking, as I know you all were too. And I often hear Susie say things that I'm thinking. And she said this morning something about the focus on the science policy interface and it being too narrow, something to that effect. And I think that that's something which I was going to speak to in the context of supporting enabling environments for focusing science in the context of problem solving in ways that maybe it's not always done. We had a workshop this summer in Boulder, which David and others in the room were involved with. A lot of us were there. And the co-production of knowledge was a big theme in that workshop. And I think that there was a lot of learning that took place in the various cases that were presented in that workshop, all of which were focused on trying to better attenuate scientific understanding of climate change in the context of questions and problems that water resources providers and utilities were trying to solve. That kind of very direct engagement is often successful and productive, and I think that many of those were. But through that workshop, and since then, and often before that, I've often focused on the potential for work that occurs in the context of climate change within one sector in one place to end up being counterproductive to other challenges that climate will present. So where water and energy intersect, for example, where water and land use and transportation planning intersect, and where those players are not talking to each other in places is sometimes a problem. Enabling environments are sometimes created by regulatory drivers. In California, there's one known as SB 375, which requires regional transportation and land use planning to occur, and it has been an effective vehicle for incorporating climate considerations into conversations about land use, transportation, and in some cases, water resources management issues. And there are others. In some cases, these are forced. And through my years, I was about 7 years at the Kresge Foundation, I helped to support the initiation or continuation or facilitation of a number of these regional collaboratives that focused on climate as a central driver for change that multiple sectors needed to have a role in addressing. And I think those enabling environments are crucial to the utility of science in the context of problem solving. I'm involved right now as an observer and advisor to one in the Puget Sound region. And this one started from a transportation planning frame and has the potential to expand much more broadly. It includes 4 counties, representatives of multiple cities within those counties, water resources managers, transportation planners, city officials, conservationists, and importantly, a knowledge partner. The University of Washington Climate Impacts Group is the knowledge partner for this enterprise. And they have been very effective in bringing climate science to the table, helping people to understand why an adaptive approach to planning and management and strategies for building resilience must be put in place, and that this is not maybe a collaborative that exists for a period of time to produce some outcome or some report, but is a venue through which ongoing engagement across those sectors, across those jurisdictions must and can occur. I think that there's opportunity for creating those kinds of activities more broadly and even beginning to scale them. And I think that there's models for that too. And I was looking for some, and one that stuck out for me, and I'm almost done. Am I okay on time? Okay. One that stuck out for me is one that many of you probably know much better than I do. It's the Results for America initiative. And this is something that the Obama administration put in place several years ago. And it is basically, what they've done is they've created a federal Invest in What Works initiative. And it has expanded to include several funds. And I'll say just a little bit about how they work after I tell you what a few of them are. There's a Social Innovation Fund, an Investment in Innovation Fund, a First in the World program, a teen pregnancy prevention program. There's an early childhood engagement and support program. And what this initiative does is it works to develop criteria and standards for success, metrics for success. And I'm going to reference Susie again. I know that's going to be hard in the context of climate resilience. We have a hard time defining success in the context of climate resilience, but I can't imagine that some of the maybe not quantitatively focused metrics, but qualitatively focused metrics that might include cross-sectoral engagement, knowledge partner, cross-jurisdictional involvement, that those might not be used to begin to qualify collaboratives that emerge or could emerge. Anyway, what these programs do is they make a commitment to a series of grants based on progress along a continuum of success. And programs that qualify initially for development grants get money for a period of time to achieve certain metrics. And if they are successful in achieving those metrics, they qualify for a validation grant, which is somewhat longer and bigger and enables them to grow to the next level. Those validation grants are then, again, proven against metrics, which are used to determine where scale-up grants will be applied. Those scale-up grants, the validation grants, and the development grants are all subject to 2 matching cycles. There's an initial matching cycle for an intermediary which makes the grants, and which must find a one-to-one match. And then for each of those grants that are made, the receiving institution must make find another one-to-one match. So the federal government gets $2 for every dollar they put in effect. Doing this kind of a thing in the context of climate resilience would, I think, offer an opportunity to engage multiple intermediaries that have similar interests, whether on topical or on regional resilience goals. I'm thinking about philanthropy in large part because that's what I do. I think that the initiative that we've been working on would be could be an effective partner in identifying those partners and catalyzing those kinds of ideas. and I welcome the opportunity to discuss that more. I want to say one more thing, and that is that when I talk about knowledge partners, when we all talk about the science policy interface, we think about the hard sciences, and we think about what science is needed in order to direct decision making. And we often, I think, leave out the role of social science in that dynamic. And I think particularly with climate change, this is an important thing that we have to capture, because there are going to be direct and initial impacts from climate change. And we have to be proactive, of course, or respond to those as they come up, depending on whether we are prepared or not. But there are going to be secondary effects. There are going to be maladaptive approaches that are taken to respond to impacts or to prepare for impacts that themselves are going to have, and those are going to have effects. So those secondary effects, the actions of institutions, of private sector, of local cities, are themselves potentially going to be as difficult to deal with and respond to in the context of climate change. And that's why a sustained engagement, a sustained collaboration in place and on topic is something which is necessary, because that is the only way that we can continue to learn and adapt and implement strategies for building resilience over time.
Just go down the line.